I mean, that last 7 minutes and 23 seconds was wild. Just to give you a sense, that was like a tight game, and it was going either direction. And I know that Michigan had opened up a double-digit lead there for a moment, but Ohio State kicks a field goal with 7 minutes and 23 seconds left. Michigan ran 4 offensive plays after that weren't kneel downs. Okay, so 4 legitimate snaps of the football. They went 168 yards in those 4 snaps on 4 rushes for 2 touchdowns. So, that's where the game is won and lost. So how did we get here? How did Jim Harbaugh do this? Last 2 years, dominating a really good Ohio State team. Well, I actually think the culmination of what we saw yesterday in the shoe. Oh, look at that. My mic just ran away from me. There we go. I got it. The culmination of what we saw yesterday in the shoe actually started, and the genesis of that was years prior in the last Michigan-Ohio State contest in the shoe, 2018. If those of you remember 2018, Michigan was rolling in on 10 straight wins, and they were actually favored over an Ohio State team that had just struggled with Maryland the week before. And Michigan rolled in there and got absolutely smoked. 62-39, okay? And it really wasn't even that close. Ohio State it was like a pinball machine, that offense. Boom, 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 boom. I mean, man beater after man beater, the speed on the field for Ohio State. And I remember walking out of that stadium, Ohio Stadium that day, thinking those programs are miles apart. Miles apart. And Jim Harbaugh has closed the gap. So what happened over those basically 5 years since 2018? Michigan finished 10-3 in that year, and in fact, the next year they actually finished 9-4. And there was some turmoil, if you could call it that, amongst the staff. Like, did you know in 2018 they actually didn't have an offensive coordinator per se? They kind of called it by committee. So, there was a lot of figuring it out on the Michigan side. And Michigan, I think, felt like they needed to change or modernize their offense. They wanted to get into more of the spread RPO style system that a lot of people were having a ton of success with at the time. Remember, Clemson's winning a national championship that year. The next season, it's going to be Joe Brady and LSU. That's the in vogue offense of the moment at that time, was the spread RPO kind of attack. And a quarterback that could do that and an offense that could do that. The defense, by the way, was a Don Brown defense that statistically would dominate lesser opponents because they had better players. But as soon as that defense, which relied on man coverage, would get against level footing, like talent, similar talent, I guess I should say, they would immediately get beat and get beaten in a bad way. So that defense was high risk, high reward. Okay. And so that all kind of collapsed. Okay. So this Michigan program went from 10-3 in 2018 to 9-4 in 2019 to 2-4 in the COVID year. Right. So it just bottomed out. Didn't work. Not even close. And Jim Harbaugh decided, you know what? I'm rebuilding this thing in my family's image, in what I want to run. Not what other people think I should run. Not what I think, is best in college football. What I know. I'm going back to what I run on offense. I'm going back to what my brother runs on defense. And he built basically the Harbaugh family football team. And that's what he's done ever since. And ever since that COVID year, this team is 24-2. That's pretty damn special. I mean, think about it. They are 24-2 in their last 26 games, and the only team in the entire country that is better than Michigan over those same 26 games is Georgia. Right? That gives you some level of they are now putting themselves on that elite pedestal in college football. And they did that, obviously, with that win yesterday. So what is the Harbaugh family football team? Well, offensively, I think it kind of goes without saying, it's a dominant run game. It's a dominant run game that uses extra tight ends and extra linemen. They want to increase the number of gaps that you have to defend. A lot of man-style blocking, powerful linemen that go straight ahead, fast backs that can jump cut, and they're going to wear you out. They want to steal your will, right? Break your will, however you want to say it. That's what they want to do. They want to impress their will upon you offensively. That is a Harbaugh thing. He did it at Stanford, and obviously he's done that now at Michigan. On the defensive side, he wanted to build an NFL-style hybrid defense. I've talked about it before on this podcast, but I'll say it again quickly. This defense and its architecture is right out of the NFL. It's right from the Baltimore Ravens. It's John Harbaugh's defense. It is started with, you've got to be really good at every level. You've got to be built front to back and inside out. Okay, so the first thing that you do is you build a run wall. You do that with defensive tackles. And they've got really big, powerful defensive tackles at Michigan. Mason Graham, the freshman, over 300 pounds. He's a wrestling champion. Obviously, Mozzie Smith. They don't get their name called a lot, but these guys are vital to what they do on the interior. Sometimes they'll play 3 defensive linemen in there and play a 3-4. Sometimes it's 2 based on the offensive personnel group. But they build a run wall, and it starts with those defensive tackles. We've known that that's been the case with Baltimore for a long time, John's defense, but now it's also the case with Jim's defense at Michigan. Then you provide some hard edges, stand-up players that you can point inwards and really make it difficult on the defense because you're trying to suffocate them all the time. Make it tough for them to get outside. So it's hard to run right at the defensive tackles. It's hard to run outside of those edge setters, those hard edges that they have with the stand-up style defensive ends or outside linebackers. And then what you have is hybrid style players in the middle of the field on the second and third level. You do that and you can cover, you can tackle, and you can play in space. So you can play the modern day football while also being big and stopping the run with your defensive tackles. And then you've got to have guys that can cover on the outside. And it just so happens that these Michigan corners this year are some of the most unheralded corners in the entire country. When you actually look at what the completion percentage these guys give up on the outside, all of them under 50%. So they can cover out there. And I think a huge tip of the cap goes to, while not an outside corner, but their nickelback, Mike Sainristil, with the greatest PBU of the year in college football against Cade Stover in the end zone. That was a sensational play that he makes, knocking that ball away. So that's how their defense is built. Okay, so this is what Jim Harbaugh did. That's the Harbaugh family football team. And he had to do that because that's the exact style of team that he had to build to beat Ohio State. See, that's why I go back to that 2018 game in the shoe. Last time it was in the shoe, because it was so obvious that those programs were miles apart, regardless of what their record said, or even what the Vegas odds makers said. They had to change the entire schematics and architecture of the team, and they did that. And now they are on equal footing to the point where they just ran this team out of the building in 2 straight years. You see, I think that there was a truth to the way that Jim Harbaugh evaluated what his team could be and how they were going to compete with Ohio State. And that truth started with this. I don't think he even thought that they were ever going to out 5-star the Buckeyes. Okay? Let me repeat that. Jim never thought or seemed to think that he was going to out 5-star the Buckeyes. So he had to build a team that was better than Ohio State at the line of scrimmage. And he did it. You see, Michigan is better on the offensive line and defensive line for the first time in a long time. That's why they're winning these games. They're tougher at the line of scrimmage, period. And I think it was such an astute observation for Jim to make, is like, how do we beat this team? Well, we can go out there. Can we outscore them? I don't know. Can we just shut them down? Well, I don't know. What can we do? We can be tougher than them at the line of scrimmage. Well, then let's do it. And they've done it. And that has paid off now in 2 straight wins. I think that that's a very astute observation and something that is very clear when I see these two teams play. Those defensive linemen make it easier for the skill position players on defense to do their job. The offensive linemen make it easier for the skill position players to do their job. You see, as we, the lay people and the fans and the broadcasters, as we're just watching the skill people and we're just watching the ball, what we don't realize is that when you're actually on the field, if you're one of those skill position players, it's incredibly hard to do your job if you're playing with an inferior line in front of you. That's just the nature of the sport. And so the way that Harbaugh equated the talent at the skill position players is that he said, we're going to be better at the line of scrimmage, and he's done it, and he's done a heck of a job of doing that. It comes down to the line of scrimmage, and there is a bottom line proposition here. Michigan's better there than Ohio State.